Alright, this is a mystery video, because I don't want any weirdos to see the topic and come in here for any kind of unholy reasons. It may or may not stay up. I'm gonna go over the best drawn feet in Azur Lane, from an artistic standpoint, of course. I would say that I am definitely the authority on this subject, which I would not claim for pretty much anything else. I'm not talking about art, by the way, I'm just talking about how feet are supposed to look. Anyway, if you want to support this type of content, don't tell anyone about this video. Also, please don't leave any weird comments, thank you. I made a tier list here, which... Alright, I'm just gonna show examples and explain my rationale for each one. By the way, I am not attacking any of the artists if I criticize any of the art. Massive respects to all of them, because hands and feet are the most difficult body parts to draw right. For feet especially, you can easily draw them with too much or too little detail, which is also entirely subjective and depends on how it flows with the rest of the piece. A lot of the things I'm going to nitpick might just be because they use the reference pose that I'm not a huge fan of. If there are any imperfections, I'm sure the artists themselves already know, but I'm going to point them out because my standards are a bit high. First up is A-Gear. Being a live 2D skin is an uphill battle because you need to make them things look right from multiple angles and through transitions, but Unang is quite literally a wizard. I've done some frame-by-frame analysis of this A-Gear skin, and the sheer versatility of Unang's skill cannot be understated. The default shot is taken from above to the outside. I think side and top shots are the most reliable for anime feet. Whether from the inside angle or outside, it's much easier to draw them from the side than from the front, where the perspective is extremely tricky, or from the bottom, where you have to consider how much detail you want to put on the sole. With that being said, let's take a look at this second angle. This pose is bang on from the front, and it's drawn quite literally perfectly. Here's a real foot in a similar pose, and yeah, A-Gear's looks even better. Not only did they nail one of the most difficult poses, but it's so good that I can't even find a real foot that looks as good. This is probably the top 5 most impressive feats in all of Azur Lane. Feats as in F-E-A-T. The next pose, I would say, is about an 8 out of 10, with the previous one being a 10 out of 10 and the first one being a 9 out of 10. Although the amount of detail on her sole flows well with the rest of the skin, the shape is not my favorite. I think the slope from the big toe to the pinky is a bit too steep, and here is a foot to show you what I mean. I prefer that shape, but maybe it's just the angle. Moving on to the first pose of the second row, the foot on the left is another 10 out of 10. As for the foot on the right, it's being shown from the inside of the foot, but the arch appears as if it's on the far side, which is a bit strange. Either way, I really love the pose and the angle on the left, and the detail is a bit less than the previous pose, but I actually prefer it as well. The next pose, however, is not really that great. The foot on the left has an oval shape, and then the one on the right is the same as the previous pose. Maybe the foot they used as reference actually did look like this, in which case I think it's just not the best angle. In any case, I would say that this is overall the highest quality feat in the game for a live 2D skin, and dare I say, maybe any game ever made. There is also this picture in the background of the A-Gear skin, which might be a teaser for a future skin. I can't quite tell who it is right now, but I already know I'm going to be buying it just from the pose being shown here. Okay, next is Akon Shinjo from the Gridman collab. The name of the artist is Kurumi, I believe. The foot on the left is easily 10 out of 10, but the one on the right is a bit off. Similar to the A-Gear example, I feel like the arch shouldn't be more emphasized on the outside. And here is some feet that I just found, and I feel like it's a good example of the contrast between the arch from the inside and the straighter line of the outside of the foot. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. I'm so sorry about this if you're watching Kurumi. Next up is Albion's base skin, drawn by ng_jie. I'm a huge fan of jewelry and nail polish as well for feet. Albion's in particular are very tastefully done, but the feet themselves are also drawn very well. Easy S tier. I actually like them better in the base skin than her Live 2D, because the angle of the Live 2D isn't as good, and it's lacking the jewelry. Next is Akatsuki in her Cruise Pass skin. Well-drawn feet are not limited to any faction or rarity. Stirrups are nice and the ankle is relatively difficult to draw, so making it look right is no easy feat. Very nice. Okay, after Akatsuki, I can't even pronounce this ship's name, but she also wears stirrups just like Akatsuki. And aside from the toes being slightly too long for my personal taste, they're perfect. She is also drawn by NGJ, so Albion was definitely not a fluke. Next up is Akagi's Live 2D skin, once again drawn by Kurumi. For this one, I'm just going to let the footage do the talking. The thing that separates this skin from most of the other Live 2Ds is that her foot is only shown from the side, which is a lot easier to pull off and doesn't suffer from being over or under detailed. Moving on to the next tier, we have the high heels from St. Louis, Kaga, and Sakawa's dress skins. Once again, we have one skin from Yunsang, one skin from Kurumi, but now AT Dan enters the fray with Sakawa. These three, along with NGJ, who did Albion and Sob, are definitely the Elite Four, I would say. Out of all of AT Dan's skins, this one happens to be my favorite. I do prefer the feet of this St. Louis skin compared to the summer one. I feel like the summer one is just a little too detailed relative to the rest of her body, but maybe that's just me. For reference, I think Aegir's skin is just the right amount of detail, and the likes of St. Louis and New Jersey swimsuits are a bit too much. Anyways, heels are very good because it forces the feet to always be in a good pose, and you don't have to worry about the sole. They also often come with the party dress skins, which are some of my favorites when done well. Next up, we have the foot jewelry tier, which includes anklets and toe rings. These are the best ones I'm aware of aside from Albion's base skin, including the breast skin that is about to come out. But to be honest, I think Tosa and breast should probably go into S tier instead. FDG's feet aren't really the focus of the skin. They're okay, but I just really like the decoration. And then Shinano's feet look quite good in the still art, but some of the poses are not the best. In particular, I think these poses look great, but most of the time in her Live 2D animations, they'll be in these poses, which are not my favorite. I think the angle is just very difficult. Putting it side by side with the Aegir pose from earlier, I think it looks a little bit awkward. Despite my high standards though, the skin overall is still among my top 5 favorites in the game, with the overall composition, special interactions, and voice acting. The next tier are the feet covered by socks. All of these have really nice silhouettes, but as a hardcore connoisseur like myself, this is just a cop-out and don't count. Some people may prefer them though. The tier after that are a few ships that I think would be perfect fits for a feet-focused Live 2D skin, like the ones Amagi and Unzen have. The conditions for this tier are that they must have a personality where they're never embarrassed, and they can't be too thick. I don't know why, but that's just the feeling that I have. Speaking of Amagi and Unzen, while their Live 2D is quite feet-centric with nice animations, there's just something keeping them from being in that upper echelon of designs. For Amagi, I think her toes are too small. For Unzen, her feet are off the screen by default unless you zoom out, which is inconvenient. And if you do zoom out, it doesn't fit the home screen too well. The stomp doesn't have enough detail, I think, which is the opposite problem from St. Louis's swimsuit, and the chocolate feeding animation is just an awkward angle to draw. There's another foot-focused Live 2D skin in Kursk, and for that one, I think the foot is not long enough, but that's my personal preference. To be honest, I'm really nitpicking at this point. The Kursk and Unzen ones are quite well done, but Amagi definitely needs some bigger toes. And finally, there are some conventionally well-drawn feet that are my favorites, just mostly due to posing. And here are some poses I would love to see used in future skins. These are just some random pictures I found on the internet. Okay, that's enough. Obviously, there are skins I didn't cover, many skins with the feet drawn but aren't the focus of the piece. But I don't even know why I made this video. It might not stay up, I don't know. If it gets age restricted, it's definitely getting nuked. but I don't know why I would, since I'm only looking at drawings of feet, which is no different from hands or knees. Alright, I gotta go.